Today we're here to talk about something that's very important. Think about this for a moment. For a while you couldn't do this. File for bankruptcy and then say, you know what, I don't want to touch my student loans. I don't want to pay them. Well, now you're able to do that. Joining us now is attorney Michael Jafar. And Michael, it's so good to see you. Thank you for joining us today. You're an attorney who specializes in a lot of different things, including bankruptcy. And here we are talking about this, something that happened just in the last couple of weeks that allows someone to basically file for bankruptcy and wipe their hands of student loans. What happened?
Yeah, so back in 1978, when the bankruptcy law was passed, Congress made it very difficult for people to wipe out their student loans in bankruptcy, right? And over the series of decades that happened after that, it became more and more and more difficult to a point where in the late 90s, people just gave up on trying to wipe out their student loans in bankruptcy. On November 17th of this past month, the Biden administration announced new guidance that now their Department of Education can use to help people wipe out their student loans in bankruptcy, whereas before it was extremely difficult. Now it is a lot easier than before.
So somebody out there, let's talk about who this person could be. And so many of our good people in the Fox 2 Nation who may be watching, maybe facing tough financial times or watching this right now, and they're saying, how do I qualify? How do I know if I'm one of those people? Who would you say this most benefits?
So there are mainly three prongs, right? There are so many people who qualify that some experts are trying to find statistics. One expert said that in the past 5 years, 250,000 people who filed for bankruptcy were actually otherwise eligible to also wipe out all or part of their student loans in bankruptcy. 250,000 people in the last 5 years who weren't even filing bankruptcy for their student loans. They were filing bankruptcy for other reasons. And 250,000 of them were also eligible to wipe out their student loans in bankruptcy. So I would say the best estimates are the majority of people who are filing bankruptcy with student loans would be eligible for a portion of this relief or all of this relief, to wipe it out, all of it or part of it.
And later on in this segment on the table, we're going to be talking about, are there advantages, disadvantages? Who should, maybe think about filing for bankruptcy? Are you someone who should be thinking about this? But right now, let's kind of focus in on what changed in November. And again, this is important. Someone out there who otherwise wouldn't have been able to do this even 2 months ago can now actually file for bankruptcy and then say, you know what, I'm done with my student loans. Does that help them in a great way, and if so, how?
Absolutely. So the way it was supposed to function back in 1978 was like this. When you file a bankruptcy, if you want to wipe out your student loans, you'd have to file a separate proceeding in the bankruptcy, a complaint called an adversary proceeding, an AP, right? It's a very common thing. You'd have to file an AP, serve it on the defendant, which is usually more often than not the Department of Education, and then either settle or win the case, or they would agree that you're eligible for it, right? From 1987 to the late 90s, it became so difficult through a combination of cases that were passed in the multiple circuits, through laws that were passed by Congress, and then just the Department of Education fighting you so aggressively that by around the late 90s, if you ask 10 out of 10 people walking on the street, hey, did you try to wipe out your student loans in bankruptcy? They'll tell you, I talked to a lawyer, he told me I'm not eligible, because lawyers just gave up on telling people, hey, I can help you out, because it became so difficult and so extremely,
such an uphill battle
to
even try to do it, right?
To even try to do it. So again, that's why people believe, technically you can actually, you could always wipe out your student loans in bankruptcy, technically, right? But less than 1% of people would even try. Less than 1% of people would even try. And those of them that tried, they would be so punished for even trying that it would be an example to the rest of the people out there that, hey, don't even try. The door is closed for you, right? So on November 17th, the Biden administration, credit to them for doing this, they announced new guidance for their attorneys. They told them when somebody files this adversary proceeding and they want to wipe out their student loans, here is a streamlined way to do it. There are three prongs. There's a form called an attestation form. They file this. As long as they're not lying, you should allow them to wipe out their student loans and move past it, at least a part of it, but maybe all of it. And this is now being tried around the country with success.
So I was going to say, November 17th was not that long ago. How often are we seeing this actually take place?
This is not, people This is too good to be true for people.
Yeah.
So people, you can go online, you could look at the forums, people who've talked to me, I don't believe it, So,
people have called you and said, wait a minute, Michael, you're an attorney.
This is a scam.
This doesn't sound real.
This doesn't sound real. So I talked to a colleague of mine from New York earlier today. He said, I had it on one case. And now I have another case in Virginia where the Department of Education is letting my client just wipe their hands clean and wipe out their student loans and move past them. What was too good to be true is now happening. This is directly from the Biden administration, their guidance. You can read it online. And so I would say the overwhelming majority of people who are behind on their student loans, who are eligible for this relief, will get full or partial relief, right? There are 3 prongs, right? The first prong is a simple one, very, very simple one. Can you afford to repay your student loans? And the answer kind of shocks people, and here's really what the answer is. When you file for bankruptcy, you have to prove that you're eligible for a bankruptcy. How do you do it? You have to look at your income and your expenses, right? So if you're making $5,000 a month, and your expenses are $4,800 a month, well, you're eligible to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Well, what if you owe $50,000 in student loans, right? So the government says on a 10-year repayment of your $50,000, do you have enough money to repay all of these loans in 10 years? The answer for over 60, 70, 80% of people who are filing bankruptcy is no, can't afford to do it. So that's the most difficult prong, and that's how you pass it. And people will, again, 250,000 of the people who filed bankruptcy in the past 5 years, not doing it for their student loans, were eligible to wipe out their student loans under that prong. Very simple. The second prong is there's 5 or 6 factors that the Department of Education looks at. In my opinion, this encapsulates the majority of people who are behind on their student loans, who are not behind on their student loans, they just can't afford to pay them all.
Sure.
And then the third one is just good faith, just like anything else in bankruptcy. When you file for bankruptcy, you have to show good faith. There are people who, not including student loans, they'll file bankruptcy and they racked up their credit cards, on vacations, on luxury purchases within 2-3 months, and they have $30,000, $40,000 in student loans or regular loans and credit cards, and they file for bankruptcy. Well, that's not a good faith. Not anybody can file bankruptcy. It has to be in good faith. And
good faith meaning that good faith says, hey, no, all the things that I'm saying about my financial picture are true?
That's being honest. Good faith is, you know it when you see it. Like, if you have a neighbor who's driving, a really expensive car and racks up, credit cards, in a short period of time, and then they file bankruptcy, you'll just know that this is not in good faith. Now, just so you know, the amount of people who are found to have filed bankruptcy in good faith is, it's de minimis, it's small, so 1 or 2% of people. It doesn't happen.
Got it.
The typical person who files bankruptcy is a person who has a job, makes money, and just can't afford to pay their credit cards, can't afford to pay, people have their car repossessed.
Well, I do want to talk to you a little bit more about who's watching right now on the other side of that camera, is, you think in your mind, as someone who specializes as an attorney in this, is eligible for bankruptcy. And we also want to talk to Michael Jafar, our guest here on the table, a little bit about, are there some bad side effects to filing for bankruptcy? We're going to take a look at all of that when we come back. Stay with us.